Hello everyone, it's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and I'm here to review Audrey's Children, and this is a new historical drama biopic from director Amy Cannon Mann, and based off of the screenplay by Julia Fisher Farbman. And this film focuses on the story of Dr. Audrey Evans in 1969, who joins the world-renowned children's hospital and battles sexism, medical conventions, and the subterfuge of her peers to develop a revolutionary treatment, while also making movements to open the first ever Ronald McDonald House. And this film, it's interesting because it hits on some things in terms of focusing on CHOP and the Ronald McDonald House, which I have volunteered at when I was in CCD back when I was getting my confirmation. And so this hits on some elements that I have experiences with, and this is, it hits the standard structure, storytelling conventions, and feel a lot of the times for many of these biopics, many of these historical dramas, focusing on the advancements of medicine, strong female lead who's butting up against sexism and just roadblocks at every single turn. And, this story unfortunately feels a little too familiar because of, historical context, but also there's a lot of films that have this specific kind of approach. But I do feel like Mann is able to inject a very emotive and impactful tone to the film. We do really have some key pieces in terms of this story that hit on a deep emotional level. You have this development between Evans and this young mother, and who she lets stay at in her apartment, and the connection they build. You have this subtle connection between Evans and Dr. Dan Angio throughout that. It's not too overt. It's not hitting you over the head with it. There's a subtlety to this growing connection that they have. And then, like Audrey, we gain connection with some of these children, and some of those stories don't exactly end well. And there's some big emotional impact there. I think this film really soars on the performance of Natalie Dormer, who's fantastic as Dr. Evans. She is powerful. She has strong screen presence. She really nails the emotional beats. There's some scenes, there's one of those kinds of moments where she kind of everything just overwhelms her and she takes it out on her wallpaper and stuff like that. But you feel the emotion, and Dormer really sells it. There's a charm. She is very charismatic, and one of the little girls talks about how she sounds funny, and then she leans into her British accent. There's just there's a magnetism to her, and I feel like that really works for this film. And they flesh out Evans enough where we see her personality, how her personality clashes with others, but also how she has this love of plants, and her engaging with her plants and stuff like that is very charming. Jimmy Simpson has a very reserved but also nuanced performance as Dr. D'Angio, and I really like his dynamic with Dorner throughout this film. Clancy Brown, who's kind of running Dr. Coop, who runs this whole piece of CHOP, and he brings a lot of gravitas and that veteran presence to those scenes. And I just think overall, this cast really, really works for this film, helps elevate the material. Like I said, that's a bit more familiar and structured in similar ways. There's some characters that are obnoxiously just bland caricatures to be antagonistic, but I do feel like generally this film avoids too much of that I'm evil because you're a woman kind of stereotypes that we expect from stories like this. There's obviously some roadblocks along the way, but I feel like this film deals with them in a little bit of a subtler way, except for the one scene where she's trying to buy a home, and then she also has to deal with sexist man who's trying to sell the house, and then the Banks who's like, where's your husband? We need him to sign off on this. But like, those things were actual things, unfortunately. And you have those kinds of moments, but overall, this has a very expected kind of feel to it. But it's a powerful story, really strong central performance from Dormer, and a strong supporting cast, and some really emotional moments that help really connect with this story. Makes this more than just your average run-of-the-mill, passable kind of historical biopic. It's not great. It's not particularly fresh and original, but it has those elements that makes it stand out. But those are my thoughts on Audrey's Children. Let me know what you think, and let's talk some movies. But thank you as always for tuning in and supporting your Wasteland reviewer.